Welcome to Doc's Lab and our second Master Series. Welcome to Doc's Lab and our second Master Series. I do believe this is the 116th video in our second Master Series, the 64th video on our 65th video on basic processors, the 28th video on sculpting processors, and in this video we are going to talk about harmonics, and this is the 5th video on harmonics. So basically, that we're going to address this in a certain way. In the last video, we talked about implementing and adding harmonics with Trash 2 in a simple workflow of trying to target where we can do that. And as surgical as you could get, you know, you can find other workflows that can get more surgical with an application like Trash or something like that. But that's a pretty simple workflow. Now, in this video, we are going to talk about some advanced harmonic editing. So in the next video, we're going to talk about RX and harmonizers to do harmonics work, additive synthesis. In this video, Melodyne is not really geared to add harmonics yet, but you can manipulate harmonics extensively. So, you know, when we get into this, we're basically looking at that when we're trying to manipulate the harmonics, this is another tool. Now, this is Melodyne Studio, so it is an investment, but keep in mind there are multiple other tools with this piece of software that make editing audio sometimes in a DAW almost like Flintstones in comparison to the Jetsons. And so as an advanced audio engineer, it is a purchase you want to either pay monthly for or save because it's worth the investment. So, or something very similar to this, but I've researched it well enough, and I'm very content that they're going to continue moving forward, and it's an investment. And you know, yearly or every other year and a half or so, they come out with a new version that's, you know, costs a little bit, but you know, new advanced techniques and things that are happening. But when we get into the harmonics, it is a phenomenal tool because first of all, we can work in track mode, which would be across the entire track, so the entire event, or separate events, which is clip mode. And you can have separate areas on a vocal, because sometimes on a vocal you'll have, like, in one area you're singing low and then medium high and then high up and really high, that the envelope of harmonics is going to be shaped differently because the transducer is producing the sound a little bit differently, a lot of times with a lot of the same harmonics, but shaped differently. So you editing for each area separately is going to be of monumental importance, because sometimes the vocalist might be during the singing part, he's like this R&B dude and he's just so smooth, but when he gets to the chorus and he kicks it up a little bit, or he's up in the, you know, in the bridge, that, well, you know, he could use a little bit of work on that, you know. And there's various, you know, degrees of how good of performers are, or how good they are at using their vocals and all kinds of things, how much you can help them besides that. And so in the clip mode, you can go to different clips in different sections. Like you can see this middle clip, and there's another clip over here, and another clip over here, that when I go into the DAW and I change which one, highlight a different one, that it's going to be working in that clip. So then when I hit that, it will show the harmonic envelope that it's generated from this clip area. Ah, dude. So this is so cool, because the thing is, you can get in here and you can edit the individual harmonics. There, say I want to go in here and edit the odd harmonics or the even harmonics like that, or, you know, vice versa, whatever. And I can manipulate them, attenuate, boost them, or whatever. And or I can go in there and choose individual ones. This one, that one, that one. or that one, and I want to attenuate and boost those, or maybe just this one. Who knows, you know? And because that's a huge thing, because a lot of times most vocalists or instruments have very specific areas or harmonics that are being an issue that you're going to want to attenuate or boost. Does that make sense? And up in the upper end, normally we're dealing with like the first 9 to 16 harmonics. You know, and after that, you start getting this tail end envelope that normally we have to deal with a broader range of equalization, you know, with a slightly larger Q, or, you know, as best we can, and then automation to try to follow it around with a vocalist. Like we talked about doing automation with equalization, it can be a pain in the butt. But here, we can get in here up into a lot of this upper end and find problem harmonics and attenuate them or boost them any way we want. So it's a huge deal. It's a work in progress, but it seems to be worked fairly transparent on just that aspect. So that's huge. You know, just take your time and be careful, but I mean, it's a monumental work in progress that seems to be working fairly well as far as I'm concerned at this moment. You know, so when you're starting to work on your harmonics and shaping your harmonic content, that it's huge, because you can pick out these individual, as you map out the harmonics of the sound and know those are the even harmonics, those are odd harmonics, that's non-harmonic distortion, or that's some other stuff, or da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. You know, you get intermodulation, distortion, all kinds of stuff happen as the thing tails off. So we're normally worried about the fundamental harmonics. You can see here, these are a little bit louder, but normally the fundamental harmonics are the loudest part of the actual sound. So basically, it's a huge tool, you know, and the concept is going to just, it's more of you understanding, mapping out the harmonics like we talked about in the second master series, and really investigating each sound separately and each instrument separately, and what effects have been used on it, distortions, whatever, different amplifiers, different microphones, to see what areas are being an issue. This harmonic might be an issue. I'm toning that down a little bit. Oh yeah, it's right there, that's good. Or this one's being an issue and it's got to get toned down. Or this one needs to get boosted up some. Oh yeah, right there. Oh yeah. You know, it's huge, you know, and that can be that simple once you really start working on your critical listening. So besides that, which is huge for manipulating the harmonics, you can get in there and deal with like the lower end harmonics separately like that, the high, things like that. There's an EQ in here to where for this separate clip, there's an EQ. This is basically the EQ of what's happening there, right? And so you can get in there, and a normal equalizer doesn't really show you that, right? So you can get in there and re-equalize it to some point of, well, that's great, but on that vocal, that is the harmonic content and equalization coming out on it, and I can reshape that. Besides just dealing with the harmonics themselves, you're dealing with bandwidths and things like that. You can actually work on the equalization for that little segment, or that verse, or that chorus, or that bridge, or that part of that bridge, wherever, or that one note. You know what I'm saying? They just want it to sound, dude, before it goes into the lead, or, you know, into that break. You know, whatever, you know, does that make sense? So it does some really good work. You also have some synthesis area for synthesizing some spectrum format and amplitude areas, but there's some work that needs to be done there, no doubt about it. The fundamental thing we're focusing on is the ability to manipulate the harmonics, attenuate and boost them, because most of the time, whenever you're dealing with any sound, unless it's a really bad performer and a really bad performance through really horrible equipment, that you're trying to take and, you know, adjust things that are happening in the sound itself to make it sound better, or make it sound more comparable to the composition or whatever you're working in. And it's a huge huge tool. Besides that, there's some other tools that we're not going to really get into too much, because there's a learning curve with all this. I mean, this is a pretty complicated piece of software. There's no doubt about it. And then keeping it going and working on it, you know, it's monumental. They have a piece of software like Capstan that's thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, you know, for just working on wow and flutter in pieces of audio, and it's a pretty expensive piece of software, you know. And they work on it. I mean, it's a beautiful piece of work. You also have some areas here to work on, like emphasis and dynamics. You can work on some comb filtering issues, adding even and odd harmonics, attenuating or boosting them, I should say, contour of the sound, and brilliance of the sound. Now, those tools are going to have a little bit different effect on different types of instruments that have been processed differently, at different types of vocalists, different genres of type of vocalists, different types of performers, and things like that. Their range is going to have a different effect on them. And so there's a learning curve there, but there's mountains of tools there besides just adjusting the harmonics that is your primary focus here in this video. But you can also go in there and adjust a whole lot of these other things that when you adjust one thing, like you adjust the harmonics, it might have another effect on the audio that's causing a different issue that you might have to correct with a little bit of brilliance or a contour or any one of these other tools that are available here. You go back into you've adjusted harmonics, and then you have to go maybe adjust the EQ a little bit over here, you know, fix that EQ up in this area, you know, I mean, in this slight area here, you know, want to attenuate that just a little bit, you know, and sometimes in a very small area that you can work in. Does that make sense? I mean, you can get in there and in a pretty small area, attenuate right in there. Does that make sense? And it's following the actual waveform. So it's not like EQ that's static. It's trying to EQ the harmonic content and equalization of the actual sound. So it's a little different than doing static EQ work. It would be more like EQing with automation like we talked about, which is really cool without having to do that. So all these tools can really help you do that. The main focus is the harmonics, which is huge. And just remember, take your time with it. I can sit here for days and days and days and days and days and days and show you what this does and what that does and what that does and what that does. But it's more in your ballpark to go in there and go, okay, what happens if I turn on the audio here and I go, do your magic, make me sound good. 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 Do your magic, make... What's going to happen when I mess with that certain type of piece of audio? You want to understand the most prominent harmonics that are in it, and then you want to really look at what's going on in the tail end of it, you know, mapping it out a little bit. You know, it's why I always told you get that test sound so you can take a look at it, get a snapshot of it on your equalizer, and then try to map it out and see what's going on so you can really go, oh yeah, and this vocalist, her, you know, flat seventh there after the, you know, the second octave is, you know, it's kind of high, you know, and she got that, it's having this effect on her vocal or any instrument or anything like that. And then you go in there, oh yeah, right in there, that harmonic's a little loud. I'm going to tone that down a little bit. And then she sounds a little bit, yeah, all right. You know, so, I mean, it's huge. Does that make sense? And problems with microphones. You got problems with equipment that your capture is from not really expensive equipment. You can have harmonics issues, artifacts happening in the harmonic area that you might want to adjust because of the frequency range that or the frequency response of the microphone and things like that of what it's capturing, actually capturing as far as opposed to what the actual sound is, that, you know, you can go in there and adjust that a little bit. My microphone's got a really bad low end, it's really cut these harmonics off here, or it's got this really sound, I'm gonna mess with these harmonics causing this crap right over here, bro. Yeah, that's my damn microphone. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, I know it sounds funny, but I mean, it's a huge thing, you know, because you really can. So, you know, I hope you take that into consideration. I really hope you think about buying this piece of software, because it's much more than being able to just do harmonics work, but it's a huge thing for you being able to really help manipulate that envelope of sound, the harmonics, the equalization, you know, different, you know, aspects that of the actual sound that have a direct relation to how the harmonics sound, that you can adjust as you work on the harmonics, and take some time mastering that to try to become that next level master audio engineer that you're going to want to have this piece of software in your arsenal. So I really hope you enjoyed this next video on harmonics, and I will see you in the next video.